Another Friday means it's time to get to our questions from the listeners.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And you can listen to us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For you first-time listeners wondering what to expect from this channel, we bring you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length. We're going to continue to remind everyone out there, whether you're a new listener or not, that beginning December 15th, we'll be dropping down to 3 episodes a week until right before Pitchers and Catchers Report in February. So really only about a month to a month and a half where you won't be having the 5-episode weekly output. But still, if there's any breaking news that happens and we've already met those 3-episode requirements for the week, we'll definitely get you an extra 1 or 2, depending on how big the move may be. Before we dive into our questions, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. One last reminder that if I miss anybody's question in this episode, it was not intentional. It just got lost somewhere in the notifications. So if I do miss it, I didn't get around to it. Nothing personal. Just respond to this video and title it Mailbag Friday so that I will be able to see that notification much easier. And that would be the main reason why I missed your question, is if you didn't title it Mailbag Friday in the comment section. But you can always reach out to me on Twitter, whether that be publicly or through direct messaging, and you can just respond to any of our YouTube videos throughout the week. Let's kick it off with Bryce's question. Saw something today that said the Dodgers were taking calls on Teoscar Hernandez. Would he be worth taking a stab at? I know his defense isn't exactly what you want, but the bat is. I did see that report yesterday as well. I also saw that Ken Rosenthal put it out there that it's unlikely that the Dodgers would move him. It's a bat that would be an upgrade for the Royals outfield, but if the Dodgers are hesitant to move him, that means they still view him as a starter in that loaded lineup. And if they still view him as a starter, that asking price is going to be pretty high for a guy that's entering, his mid-30s or getting closer to his mid-30s. He was coming off of a little bit of a down year, still has immense power, and that's not going to go away. But he's a poor defender out there, whether you put him in left or in right field. It doesn't feel like the most Royals move of all time. You have to be open to any possibilities, though. The one thing that does match up, this is a right-handed outfield bat that is available through trade. It just kind of depends on what the Dodgers would be asking for a guy coming off of a little bit of a down year by Hernandez's standards. Next one's coming from Jayhawks Royals Steelers country. As of right now, what do you think the Royals starting outfield looks like on opening day? The only two I can pencil in at the moment are Jack Caglione and Kyle Isbell. I could see a world in which Harrison Bader maybe is signed, and that could shake things up in center field. But as for left field, truth be told, I can't really give you a name because it's nobody on the roster. Is that a way I could answer this? Their starting left fielder, their opening day left fielder is going to be somebody that's not in Kansas City right now. I feel very confident that is going to be the case. It's not going to be a Mike Yastrzemski, in my opinion, who they'd have to bring back. It's not going to be a Nick Lofton. I really do feel that their everyday left fielder will be somebody they've acquired through trade. So unfortunately, I can only give you 2 out of the 3. And even with Kyle Isbell, I'm not 95% sure or close to 100% sure that he's going to be the guy. Really, I only feel confident that Jack Caglione is going to be the team's right fielder, and he still has to go out there and win a job in spring training. This one's from Chad. Jack, I always look forward to your show. Keep up the great work, and I am ready for the World Baseball Classic. Well, thanks for the kind words, Chad, and I absolutely am as well. I want to find a way to get down there to Houston for that first action of pool play. Bobby Wood Jr. is going to be the starting shortstop for Team USA. It is one of my favorite events, period. This includes all sports. I get more charged up and fired up for the WBC than I do for the Olympics because I feel the atmospheres, the baseball being played is just so electric. So I'm right there with you, Chad, that I feel that the WBC is going to be phenomenal this year. And Team USA is going to have to take back the crown from Japan, who beat them in the championship last year. And we got quite the cinematic experience with Shohei Ohtani facing Mike Trout in a one-run game, bottom of the ninth inning last year. So to top that, the only thing I can ask for is that Team USA would emerge victorious over Japan. This one's coming from Chris. With Boston having acquired multiple starters the past few weeks, does this lower the chances of them and the Royals matching up? I feel I'd be foolish in saying that it's done nothing for those chances. I do feel that it's impacted it a little bit because what they've done is acquired two guys who are middle of the rotation to back half of the rotation pitchers. And that means that if the Royals and Red Sox are going to line up for a deal, it's for Cole Reagans or bust, in my opinion. And the Royals just don't seem that motivated to do it, even if that trade involved Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu. Cole Reagans is somebody that they are very adamant about in being their ace, the guy to build around. And if Boston is giving their starting rotation depth, the last thing they need to go out there and acquire is a number one pitcher. And the only way the Red Sox could get Cole Reagans is if they gave up Jarren Duran and then some. And that would maybe include 2 or 3 more players, and all the Royals would be sending is Cole Reagans. That's how high their asking price would be. So I feel it has lowered the chances a little bit, but I'm not completely removing it from the realm of possibility. This one's coming from Chris, another Chris, actually. What starting pitcher is most likely to get traded? I'm going to stick with Chris Bubic here. Noah Cameron is number 2 on this list, and then I'd say the Ryan Bergert, Stephen Kolek, and then Reagans, Waka, and Lugo. I've said before that Waka and Lugo are not really being entertained in the trade market because they're not going to bring you the return that you need. When it comes to the most likely to get dealt, though, it's Chris Bubic because he's coming off a year where he was really good in the first half, then was hurt. He can be a starter or a reliever, and he's going to be a free agent after season's end. That is the perfect time to trade somebody, and if it's not now, then it would be at the trade deadline, assuming that he hasn't made a huge impact in the Royals getting to the postseason. If the Royals are out of it or he's not pitching that well and it's a crowded starting rotation, maybe you do keep him in the bullpen or maybe you try to move him at that point in time. Noah Cameron, though, has a ton of controllable years. He's not a free agent until 2031. So if you're going to move Noah Cameron, you need to be very, very sure the guys you're bringing back are going to be instrumental pieces in your team getting back to October. But I do feel Bubic is the likeliest to be traded, and I still have this sense that somebody is going to give the Royals what they want for Bubic because the upside is absolutely there, and I feel the Royals would rather hold on to guys that are under team control for more than just a couple of years. This one is coming from Paul. Is this the first time for you that all the fantasy GM talk, which is usually fun, has taken a laborious quality as opposed to that of a lively experience as it usually should be? Also, it seems no matter what they do, there will be a faction of fans who will be dissatisfied. That is the most factual and true statement I have heard on a Mailbag Friday. No matter who the Royals acquire, no matter who the Royals trade, there is going to be a chunk of people that are very upset about it. That's always going to be the case. And that's really the case for any team out there, right? There's never going to be a unanimous, this trade was amazing and everybody in the fan base loves it and they don't care at all who they dealt away. I mean, the last time I can remember that everybody feeling pretty much unanimous on a trade decision was Lucas Erceg, and that was because the guys they gave up weren't really high-level prospects. And Lucas Erceg was somebody that was easy to embrace because he was an elite reliever with 5 years of control. When it comes to a trade this offseason, it's going to be a pretty big one. And if you're trading away a Cameron or a Bubic or a Berger, there's going to be people that are upset. And even if you get someone like a Duran, a Abreu, a Brendan Donovan, there will be people that push back on it. And I've done enough podcasts this offseason with potential trade targets where I can tell you honestly that there has not been one guy that everybody in the comment section said, absolutely. There was always somebody that was in complete disagreement with me on how much they hated that player and never wanted them to be in Kansas City. So whoever it will be, yeah, it's going to be somebody that is maybe embraced by 75% of the fan base, and then 25% are going to absolutely hate the deal. That's the way it's always going to be. But I would say for this offseason, I will always take the fantasy GM talk before a move happens. I mean, when I took over this podcast, we were in the middle of 2023, and the Royals were barreling toward 100-plus losses. Not a lot of people were excited by it. I feel thrilled that for a team that just missed the postseason, I can still have great content and exciting content to talk about. At least I feel that way on December 5th, December 6th, or whatever day it is, because right now it's basketball and football season. But there's a lot of you out there, and I always appreciate the loyal listeners and anybody that tunes in December. You want to hear about baseball, and sometimes the fantasy GM talk is what gets everybody excited for baseball, or until, a major move happens coming from JJ Piccolo. Okay, let's take our first break of the show. When we come back, still a lot of questions to get to next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can listen to us on wherever you download your podcast. Want to tell you about the first sponsor today in Gametime. The World Cup is back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hard part. That's why Gametime is clutch and finally gives fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Gametime, you can track prices dropping in real time, get alerts when great seats open up, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets, every match, every concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, and go download Gametime today. Next round of questions is going to begin with Aiden. Second question from me: if the Royals make a deal that involves Reagans, we would need to sign a pitcher. My ideal pitcher for the Royals who is affordable would be Michael King. I would do it for 4 years, $92 million. Truthfully, I would say that if the Royals do trade, one of those top-level arms in their rotation, if we're talking Cole Reagans or Chris Bubich or Noah Cameron, honestly, I feel they're going to replace that guy with a Ryan Bergert or Stephen Kolek. They may sign somebody to give them some depth, give them some value. But that also leads me back to the point of I don't see them trading Reagans for that exact reason. You can't replicate Cole Reagans with who you have on the roster. Could you replicate Chris Bubich? I do feel that you could. Could you replicate Noah Cameron? I feel that you could, and you don't need to spend a ton of money in free agency. You can use one of the starters like a Bergert to replace a Chris Bubich, but then you need to go sign somebody equivalent of Ryan Bergert as your swing guy out of the bullpen. And there's going to be very affordable options out there. I just look at what the Royals have payroll-wise, what they're willing to add, and I do feel that, the free agent market is not really going to favor them when it comes to starting pitching. They can find somebody later on in the year on a one-year deal, I would say. But we'll have to, see how that all plays out, later on in December, maybe January or February. Next one's coming from Jonathan. Is a trade for an MLB-ready outfield prospect like Garcia from Boston good enough for an outfield addition to make the Royals happy going into the year, barring they also sign a platoon outfield bat? Well, I know you got this question in before the deal last night where Garcia actually went to Pittsburgh in that deal for Oviedo. What I will say is this, though, because I feel I can spin it in a way that gives you some kind of an answer. For a guy like Garcia, who's a prospect that's never proven at the big league level, that's not what the Royals are going to be looking for, even if you do go with the platoon option to help him out a little bit. That's Jack Caglione in right field. You have an unproven bat that's going to need a little bit of help in developing. Whoever they acquire, it's to take the pressure off of someone like Jack Caglione and Carter Jensen, the younger bats in the lineup. So, no, I don't believe that was ever going to be on the table for the Royals unless he was an additional throw-in and also getting a Jarren Duran or a Wilyer Abreu. This one from Phil: Bubich and Serpa for Duran or Abreu. Who says no? I feel that Boston would say no on that deal. They've been pretty clear about if Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu is getting moved, it's Cole Reagans, and that's what Boston wants. At least it's that way for now. It could always change, but to me, it would pivot from Cole Reagans to Noah Cameron and not Bubich due to Bubich's injury concern and also him being a free agent at season's end. So the Royals sending not one but two young pitchers with multiple years of, or I guess not Bubich, Serpa's got a couple years of control. That wouldn't be enough for Boston to move someone like Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu because the Royals aren't the only suitors for them in getting one of those outfielders. This one's coming from Bryce. The Royals never seem to be very involved with the international free agent market from Japan. Is it a money thing, or do they just put all their eggs into the Dominican/Cuban side of it? Would love to see more involvement. I would as well. I feel there is so much talent over there that could excel over in Kansas City. The problem is now that the Dodgers have become such a big player over there, where the big name free agents, the guys that can really make a difference, the Dodgers have the easiest recruiting chip of all time. They've got Shohei Ohtani, and then Shohei Ohtani was able to recruit Yamamoto, and then Yamamoto was able to recruit Roki Sasaki, and now they're going to be able to continue to recruit some of these guys unless they just want to play against the Dodgers, right? Have some of that competition. Another part to this too, which takes Kansas City out of the running in some of these discussions, and it is brought up from time to time, but it's also where these players from Japan want to go play that feels closer to home, right? They love going to Seattle or San Francisco or the Dodgers because there might be more of a Japanese influence there. It feels closer to home, where you're certainly not getting that in Kansas City, where you're landlocked, right? And there's not going to be as many people in one city. Like Ichiro going to Seattle made a lot of sense. And when Ohtani was picking between Toronto and the Dodgers, no, it made a lot of sense because both those cities do have a lot of Japanese influence. And so it's more comfortable. It's more inviting and coming over from a different country, which that's something we don't always factor in. It could make a lot of sense fit-wise. The Royals could be more aggressive money-wise. But I would feel that in going over to Japan, number one, you're going to have to beat the Dodgers out for a number of these prospects, which is already hard to do with the money that you do have. And number two, even if you could afford the player, what's your pitch, right? Because for some of the Japanese players, it's not all about, well, that team's really good. It makes a lot of sense for me. It might be a comfort thing. I want to go play with a former teammate of mine, or I want to play in a city that feels like home. And it's very relaxing to me. It's easy to transition. And here's the last part to it. When you speak a different language, you want to go somewhere where you don't feel like such an outsider. It's easier to meet people, to feel comfortable in this city, to be able to go out in public outside of baseball and feel like you are at home. Those are all the little factors there. And so with all that rambling there, it's a great question, by the way. That's why I feel like the Royals just aren't as active. We see a lot of, Midwest teams and smaller market teams not go over to Japan as often. The Royals do have a pretty big influence in the Dominican Republic with their, facilities out there, and they do want to put a lot of money into that. But I, for one, would love to see them dip their toe in the pool of talent over there in Japan, because I believe in the Nippon League that there's so much talent to pick from, and it's only going to get increased, or there's going to be more players coming over from Japan in the coming years because these guys are seeing what other Japanese stars have been doing in baseball the last couple of years. This one's coming from Aiden. Fun hypothetical trade. Royals trade Reagans to the D-backs for Ketel Marte, Cole Drake, and their number one prospect and Ryan Waldschmidt. That would be a trade that I think I would make, as it helps you both for the short term and the long term. Your thoughts? It would be a great return for the Royals, but the Diamondbacks would push back on that, mainly because Cole Reagans, as good as he is, as good as he potentially could be, he's only done it once at the big league level. And to give up Drake, Marte, and your number one prospect, that's putting all your eggs in the basket of Cole Reagans being a Cy Young winner, which he could be, but I'm not sure the Diamondbacks would be sold enough to put three guys in a package just for Cole Reagans. It would probably take a little bit more on the Royals side. This one's from Royals Chiefs. Saw the Royals are signing one of the top international outfielders in Anibal Gomez. Nice addition to the farm system. Yeah, I saw this video as well. That kind of goes back to our point of the influence they have over the Dominican Republic. It is a dart throw when you're scouting, 16-year-olds over there, 15 to 16 and 17-year-olds. You don't know what they're going to look like when they're 21 or 22. I mean, Eric Pena was somebody that was a top prospect over in the Dominican Republic, was drawing comps to Carlos Beltran, and then never lived up to that. In fact, never got above low A, which was alarming because he didn't develop properly. But that's the dart throw you have. So I wouldn't put too much stock into a 16 or a 17-year-old being one of the top prospects, because none of those guys are can't miss. You can't be a can't miss prospect when you're 16 or 17 years old. That doesn't really happen until you're at bare minimum 18 to 19-year-old guys. So those guys are still 2 years away from really being seen as big-time prospects. But you look at someone like Kenry Churio, who moved rather quickly through the Royal system last season. Hopefully they can do it with a bat in this next signing class. This one's coming from Royals Jayhawks. As of right now, what do you think the Royals starting outfield looks like on opening day? Yeah, I'll just circle back to my previous answer where Jack Caglione's the only one I feel pretty confident about Kyle Isbell should be out there, but we'll see if they sign someone like a Harrison Bader or an Austin Hayes to help out with the outfield a little bit. Left field, it's somebody that is just not on the roster at this point. Let's take our final break of the show. When we come back, we'll wrap it up with our final set of questions next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can follow me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Want to tell you about the title sponsor in FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. I'm going to give you another college football pick for tomorrow afternoon. In fact, it should be tomorrow morning for some of you. Texas Tech and BYU in the Big 12 Championship in Arlington at Cowboy Stadium. I'm going to go with the Red Raiders winning big. It's a double-digit spread. They hammered BYU the last time they played. And in all 11 of their victories, unless I'm missing one, they've beaten everybody by double digits and then some. I don't see that changing whatsoever going up against BYU for the second time. I would like to see a closer game, but I don't see it. Texas Tech is by far and away the best team in the conference and one of the best teams in the country. Give me the Red Raiders to cover that large spread in the Big 12 Championship game. Final set of questions is going to begin with Eli. Do you think we should leverage our comp pick in round A this year for a trade? I would say no. I would like to hang on to that comp pick. You want to continue to replenish the farm system. And since all signs have pointed to the Royals trading pitching for a bat, that's what I imagine they're going to stick with there. So I don't feel there's any need to trade that comp pick unless some team, that's the last box you need to check off in acquiring the bat that you need. If you had to throw it in there, I guess you could entertain it, but I would really like to hold on to it going into this upcoming MLB draft. Bryce's question, how does Boston's trade today impact a potential deal for Duran? Specifically for Duran, it does lessen the chances, but if the Royals wanted Duran, they could trade Cole Reagans and try to work up some deal there, but I wouldn't do it, and I know for a lot of you, you wouldn't do it either. This one's from Casey Preds fan. What do you think of Heriberto Hernandez from the Marlins as an option for the Royals? Just an option I thought about. Young, controllable right-handed outfielder that the Marlins might be willing to move because of Griffin Conine coming back next year. Really, really great poll here to talk about because he's not somebody that we have discussed at any point this offseason. And I was really impressed with Hernandez when the Royals went to Miami earlier this year and just got smacked around in those games. That was a really frustrating series, but I also think it showed how improved the Marlins had got under Clayton McCullough in his first year as manager. It's a young, fun team to watch. If they can get the fan base behind them this year, maybe they can make a little bit of noise. And that's what I would say the Marlins would push back on. They're entering this window of contention or the first year of that contention window, and I feel that they are going to be a little bit more aggressive than people might think they will be. But they want to build around guys like Hernandez, and even with Conine coming back, the injury concern and what he'll look like in his return to the lineup, I'm not sure the Marlins will be sold that you're confident enough where you can just move on from Hernandez and try to get pitching in return. If the Marlins do make any trades, I think it'd be for Edward Cabrera. I know that our loyal listener Shane has brought him up before. Sandy Alcantara is another name that they could look to move. But as for their bats, it seems like the Marlins want to hold on to almost all of those guys unless the right deal came in place. I'm not even sure if the Royals are interested in what Miami has to offer, who's even on the table for them, because we just haven't heard that much on if the Royals and Marlins have engaged in any trade talks. This one's from RB Carr. Who's more of a capable left fielder, Brandon Lau or Jeff McNeil? Who's more realistic? Would you have a preference? Neither is a perfect fit, but above average bats who can be a stopgap backup plan. Brandon Lau would be my pick there. 30 home run bat. You put him at second base, and then Jonathan India would become your backup. You'd have to sign somebody for left field to be your everyday left fielder. McNeil is fine. I feel that he would be an upgrade over what they've had at second base or in left field or anywhere in the outfield for that matter. The age does concern me. A little bit more of a down year for him last year. He's 33 years old. I would rather go with Brandon Lau and then maybe even look into an extension because he is going to be a free agent at season's end. Blaze's question, could the Royals make a trade for a guy like Jake Myers or Luis Robert to address center field after making a trade for their left fielder? If so, what would they cost? Jake Myers would be far more plausible than Luis Robert. We talked about both earlier this week. I love Jake Myers and what he'd be able to do for this outfield. I mean, this is a guy that I think fits what the Royals are looking for in a lot of ways for center field. Luis Robert, not so much. For Myers, they're looking for young, controllable starting pitching. I think you could get Myers for a Stephen Kolek. I don't know if you'd want to go as far to trade a Ryan Bergert or a Noah Cameron. And in fact, I wouldn't do that at all. But if it was a Kolek for Jake Myers, two guys that are near their age 30 season, I feel it could make a lot of sense for both sides. This one's coming from Royals Rundown. I think we should trade Bubic because he's on an expired deal, and I don't think he will have as good of a year as he had last year, and we really have good depth with Berger. That's what some of the opinions have looked like from some of you listening each and every day, where Bubic is going to be a free agent. He's been injury prone in his career. He's the guy you want to move. The pushback would be, can you get the return you want for a guy that's coming off of a rotator cuff strain? And the year before that, it was Tommy John. So he's not had a full season at the big league level since pre-2023, and that has scared off some teams in trying to acquire him via trade. Brian's question, thoughts on Buster's trade proposal with Arizona? I don't think I can make that trade. We discussed it in yesterday's episode, so I strongly urge everybody to go back and listen to that one. If it was Ketel Marte and Cole Reagans for straight up, I would say no. If you could get one player and maybe a prospect throw in additionally for Cole Reagans and get Ketel Marte, I mean, man, you're talking about the Royals having one of the better infields production-wise in all of baseball. I mean, Ketel Marte is the best bat via trade, a realistic trade option, I should say. And if the Royals found a way to land him, it would likely cost you a Cole Reagans. I wouldn't do it one for one, but if you got a little bit more in that deal, it'd be pretty hard to say no, in my opinion. Let's go to Jerry's question. He's got two of them. If the Royals and one or two other teams were to offer about the same contract to free agent left fielder, how much, if any, do you think the size of Kauffman Stadium plays into that decision of the player? Not very often. I mean, it's a big outfield, but it's not a difficult left field to play. It's not Fenway Park, right, where you have the short left field. It's not Yankee Stadium. It's not Camden Yards. I mean, you have a big gap out there in left center, but it's 330, 335 down the left field line. I don't believe that would persuade anybody to not take a deal in Kansas City because of how big Kauffman Stadium is or how big left field is. But I do feel that if they got a better offer from somebody out there, maybe if they were a poor defender, they would try to leverage a bigger deal into Kansas City because they wouldn't want to play left field. I just don't think it's going to be as big of a factor as some people might think it is. And the second question from Jerry, if you had to bet $50 on an outfielder that the Royals would sign or trade for, who would you put that 50 on? I'll say Harrison Bader. It just a lot of smoke around him from national reporters out there. He does feel like a very Royal fit, but that's really the only guy I would have maybe a little bit more confidence in than the rest of the free agents out there. Let's jump over to YouTube. John's question, could they eventually make a move in center field that makes Isbell the fourth outfielder? Kind of just play off of that. There absolutely is a scenario where that happens. If you bring in Harrison Bader on a 2 to 3 year deal, he becomes your starting center fielder, in my opinion. Even though you could platoon those guys, that feels like the perfect move to make Kyle Isbell a fourth outfielder. John's question, a different John, what outfield bat that has been rumored to be available would you be the most excited in trading for, regardless of the team or contract? I mean, it's pretty hard to not get excited about the possibility of Jarren Duran or Wilyer Abreu. And because the Royals and Red Sox match up on paper the best, that would be the deal that I think excites me the most. Brendan Donovan, I feel, would be a really nice fit in Kansas City. I would hate to see Noah Cameron or Chris Bubic go pitch for the Cardinals, but I'm sure that Cardinals fans would say I'd hate seeing Brendan Donovan play for the Royals. So those would probably be the guys that get your juices flowing a little bit more than the rest. There's always a chance though somebody pops up in the winter meetings that is better than all three of those options. This one's coming from J.A. Do you think there's more value to unlock in Angel Serpa, Stephen Kolek, and Ryan Bergert through pitching development that is not being tapped into yet? If we're talking about the guys that had the biggest chance to pop, I'd say Ryan Bergert. The safest bet of those guys would be Stephen Kolek. But Angel Serpa, some teams do view him as a starter. I feel I have said that before. Even in trade interest, they view Angel Serpa as a starter. In Kansas City, he's just going to be a reliever. So I would say that there's a chance one or two of those guys really pop this year. My money would be on Ryan Bergert. Colton's question, what is your best guess as to when we will get another update from the Royals on their new stadium? I read something the other day on a deadline, and there was another deadline that's happening. I'll be quite honest with you. I'm so out of the loop on that stuff now because anytime there's been a rendering or some sort of deadline, nothing happens. So I would hope here in the next maybe 2 months, we'll get more official word, but I've heard so many options and locations and things being close to a deal and then not close to a deal whatsoever. It makes your head spin. So my hope is 2 months, but I really don't have much other than that. This one is coming from a female Royals fan. We aren't trading Cole Reagans. How about trading Luinder Avila? He's a trade option that I hadn't really considered, but it's possible. He's blocked right now in Omaha. There are teams that could view him as a starting pitcher, liked what they saw last September when he got called up by the Royals. He could be entertained for sure. I would just see him as more of a throw-in than a headliner in a trade where the Royals would be sending him and getting a bat in return. This one's coming from Logan. If you're in the Royals front office and want to make a serious splash with a trade, what is your move? Reagans plus pieces for Ketel Marte, Brendan Donovan, etc. If I was the GM, I still look to an outfield option. I'm not going to turn my nose up at an infielder, but if I was to get a left fielder and an everyday left fielder, I feel that Brendan Donovan would be that good fit. I know he's a second baseman, but he can play left field. And I just feel really safe in making that move because I feel that what he did last year is easily, able to be replicated in 2026. He can be a 280 hitter with a 340 to 350 OBP hit at the top of your order. That'd be a really nice pickup for the Royals. And I don't believe he'd be as expensive as someone like a Jarren Duran or a Wilyer Abreu. This one is coming from Jim. If we would sign Bader and Yaz plus a platoon right-handed outfielder and keep all the starting pitchers to protect from injury, hopefully Kaiser Jensen becomes a better than average hitter. Would it be enough to make the playoffs? Here's the unpopular take. I'd say no. They need to get a difference maker or two for that lineup because of how poor it was last year. I mean, they just can't really, cut any corners in building this offense. They need this offense to be middle of the pack at worst, I would say, and then have some of these starters stay much healthier than they were in 2025. But I don't believe that would be enough. I don't think that Harrison Bader and Yaz as a platoon in left field and then another platoon in right field is going to do enough. I know that Caglione and Jensen being league average bats could do a lot, and it would do a lot for this lineup, but they still need that difference-making bat. You're not getting that with Harrison Bader and Mike Yastrzemski. This one's from Brad. Hi, Jack. I love the podcast. I would like the Royals to bring in German Marquez as an arm if Bubic or multiple arms get traded. What is your opinion on bringing in Marquez if Bubic or those multiple arms get traded? I still think this stuff could play up a little bit better than it has at Coors Field, and I don't fault any pitcher for underperforming at Coors Field. It's so tough to be successful there. It's a cheaper option for sure. I would rather just go with Ryan Bergert and Stephen Kolek. I don't see them trading multiple starters, by the way. I feel that it's going to be one. They'll replace that starter with a Bergert or Kolek and then sign somebody to a one-year deal to kind of round out those 7 or 8 starters. This one is coming from Elizabeth. Why does it have to be a trade? I don't know where Andy Rodgers got the idea that we have a lot of extra pitching, but after the season in 2025 and the injuries to our pitching staff, I would not dare to trade anybody from the rotation. Well, here's the thing. After the trade deadline in 2025 where they got Bergert and they got Kolek and they got Falter, I know people aren't huge fans of Bailey Falter, but you get all those options. You do have starting pitching now. When they were starting Rich Hill and using openers, that was pre those 3 guys being brought in, and them acquiring those 3 pitchers was so they could make a push for the postseason, but also come off-season time, they could trade some guys and bring in bats that they need. Annie is reporting that correctly because that is the likeliest option the Royals have to acquire a bat. Free agency just doesn't really line up for them this year with their payroll. Braden's question, this will be our last one. I've thought about this more recently. Would Byron Buxton be a worthy trade target? I get the injury history, but Minnesota doesn't necessarily need a monster haul while rebuilding. Plus, just want to say thank you for making this podcast my most listened to, according to Spotify. Well, we'd love to hear it. I know those all came out, so very glad that a lot of you have been such loyal listeners, and that's why I love doing this podcast. Love covering the team, but love hearing from you even more than that. Buxton is a very intriguing option, and he'd be a tremendous get for the Royals. Pushback would be Twins aren't going to trade him in division unless they would get a haul. If it was on the National League side, maybe they could back down a little bit. But if he was going to the Royals with how many years he has left on his contract, they don't want to face him more than 10 times a year, which they would be in going to Kansas City. I would love him here, but it would just take way too much from what the Twins, I'm sure, would be asking for their prize piece there. Joe Ryan's their prize pitcher. Byron Buxton's probably their prize player in general for any trade. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second, find the Locked On MLB podcast where there's no offseason. Sully keeps you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed MLB fan. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll be off this weekend unless there's a big trade we need to talk about. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.